I was expecting to see Linda this morning.
Is Rich not here? All right, good to go.
Okay, you are watching the planning board meeting April 10. First, I'd like to thank all of the volunteer planning board members and alternates for attending each and every time. I will say so because none of the boards or committees of the town would function without dedicated volunteers. Thank you. A roll call. Rick, we start with you.
Rick Smith, member. Michael Pell, member.
Margaret Turner, select board ex officio, sitting in for Rich Rita.
Yes.
Nancy Knight, alternate.
Bill Spence, member.
Catherine Brennan, member.
Morgan Dean, member.
John Racine, member.
Rob Wilson, alternate.
Alan Burko, alternate.
And Tara is present.
Hi, Tara.
I am.
Hello, Tara. Today's agenda, we were intending to hold a public hearing on the site plan review regulations and alterations thereof. But there is no one in the public gallery.
Open it and then.
I would, yes, I think that's the proper procedure would be to open the public hearing, to say that there are no participants, and therefore close the public hearing.
Or do you have to ask anybody?
And Bill, I have a few non-substantive changes.
Okay, I had, go ahead.
That
You have
I
no-
want you to look at before you adopt, if you're ready to adopt.
Yes,
If you recall that it was kind of a rushed process to get the substantive stuff done before my contract expired the end of December, and we were doing the zoning amendments at the same time, so this didn't get, the previous language in here didn't get a good thorough look from me at that time. Now that it has, there are a few things. I mean, this is just a comma. I'm not gonna talk about commas, but this, I don't know what you have in front of you, but I'll put on the screen. In section 6C, developments of potential regional impact, I think there was an and in here that should have been an or, because this is a list of the factors that any one of these can trigger needing to declare it with potential regional impact.
Okay, give us the section again.
6C, developments with potential regional impact.
6C.
It's not the zoning ordinance.
See?
Number 5 says it's a list of things that can trigger regional impact notification.
Zoning ordinance, it's the site plan regulation. That's just a copy of the zoning ordinance.
Oh, so we're all looking for something we don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you not have it in front of you?
I see.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, I didn't grab that one.
I mean, I have it on the screen too.
All right, 6C. Developments with potential regional impact, is that correct?
Yes.
Oh, I see. And you're saying that should be an or, not an and.
Can you not see I'm sharing my screen. Can you not see it?
But we see.
Yes,
We
we
see
see it.
Okay, so I've made the suggested change highlighted in yellow,
Yes,
Perfect.
I agree.
and I'll go through. I made them all highlighted in yellow. So on this. This I think is a typo at the end of C. Time and place of the hearing, and it should be their right to testify concerning the development.
Yeah, I saw that.
This
Okay, I agree.
next thing is just a comma. This next thing is just a capital. In application requirements, section 7B3. It looks like you had copied some language in maybe from the subdivision application items and forgotten to take this phrase out, whether or not all land therein is to be subdivided, because that's something that will go in subdivision regulations, not site plan regulations.
Okay.
Alan has his hand up.
Tara, can you explain to me on section 6, why it's the board's responsibility to contact all these people as opposed to the applicants?
Because it's a state requirement that you do it.
So if there's a mistake in what the applicant gives us, who's going to be responsible?
It's good to check it. We all always recommend that town check it before going forward.
But essentially, the board's now going to be responsible for this, as opposed to
It's
the
not
applicant.
really like a liability. It's like whether the applicant makes a mistake or you make a mistake, and a butter who didn't get noticed can appeal on those grounds. Nobody's kind of in trouble for it, but it gives an abutter the right to appeal.
Okay. Let me, one more second question, if I may, in part, section 5B3A, should we not include easements on people that should be notified?
Wait a minute, slow down, Alan.
Yeah, I'm not where you are yet.
It's page
Section 5B3,
Right, is this 5? No. Yeah, I have that. Holders of conservation, preservation, or agricultural preservation restrictions.
but 3A,
Yeah. 3A.
owners and abutters, how about easements?
That's the last line of that. It's a state requirement. It's very specific. It's holders of conservation, preservation, or agricultural preservation restrictions. If you would also like to include easement holders, other kinds of easement holders, we can certainly add that if the board would
Well,
like.
that's my question, because in section 6, we do include the word easements.
Yeah, and that's probably because late as we go on, I tend to shorten that and not write out conservation, preservation, but it is a good idea to include any kind of easement holders. Would the board like to see that added into A?
Sure.
Yeah.
Like,
I'd say yes.
like if we did and other easement holders, does that make sense here?
Yeah.
It's certainly something we do. This is just basically from the state requirement, so that's good idea.
Do we know all of the,
Wait a second, do you have hard copies?
Bill, do we know,
Where are they?
or do we have a list of all of the easement holders everywhere in town?
No, it's we're saying it's their responsibility to provide that with their application.
We're sharing, but.
Oh, we can share,
It's whose
we can
responsibility?
share, it's just,
Yeah,
I
we
didn't
can
realize that you had passed
It's
any.
it's the
Understand.
applicant's responsibility to provide that list with their application.
Okay, cool.
So he was talking about.
And I'm sorry, there's too much going on here.
Yes.
So
He's talking about.
I guess theoretically,
She's gonna
everybody
have,
would have on their deeds if there is an easement holder.
I would think so.
And they should know, right? I mean,
I mean, yeah.
whether it's a power line easement or somebody has a right of way to another lot or stormwater.
In most cases, the tax maps have dotted lines where there are easements. We don't necessarily have every one of them, but we have the majority.
I'm just asking, because if we're putting something, I'm asking this, if we're putting something in there regarding easement holders. Then,
Then we need to know who they are.
yeah. I
Well,
mean,
but again, Mike, it's
Just
the
ask-
applicant's responsibility, not the board's.
I agree with that.
If they get an appeal because they missed something, they're the one burdened by that, really. They're the one delayed.
We can help them if we know that there's an easement there. And we're generally aware when we're going through water and sewer easement, for the lines that go across private property, that sort of thing, we'll catch the majority.
Right, but I wouldn't want the town to be carrying the responsibility of having to identify them all.
We always check the list anyway when the application comes in. It's not and like Tara said, it's not anything you can be sued over, you just open up the appeal process.
Okay.
I mean,
Right, the town doesn't have any responsibility in here. It's a good idea to help because it is a burden for you too if there's an appeal.
Asking, be good.
All right, any others, Tara?
Yes, we'll get there. This is the generic required language for flood insurance, but you've had the
Page 10.
yeah, my page numbers are different because I have them marked up, but in special flood hazard areas, F, you've had the subdivision language in there instead of the site plan. So I'm just taking out, the number of lots and saying proposals for development greater than 5 acres. That would be the trigger in a site plan. I'll keep going if I don't hear anything different. In the next section, G, landscaping, this is an old reference to something in the subdivision regulations that's not a section anymore of the subregs. So that's just something we missed in the past. That's a comma. That's, I had 2 words for stormwater when it should have been 1. This is really just kind of in section 11, administration and enforcement, C. This is really just editorial. It looks like the language was copied from the statute and is generic instead of for you. So it says in subdivision regulations, site plan review regulations, and zoning ordinances, instead of the subdivision regulations, site plan review regulations, and zoning ordinance. I get that was just somebody missed that and kept copying it from the statute. Again, they're not substantive. That's it. So, I think mine, I hope, and yours that you've had so many opportunities to talk about it. And I hope you feel ready to adopt it, and I'll clean up the copy and get it to Elisa this morning.
Okay, sounds good. Well, if you would like, I have a list of the site plan review regulation changes, the substantive changes. I don't know whether everybody read them or not, but I struggled through it. Well, there was a great deal of work done. First of all, the purpose was updated. There's language about safety, drainage, groundwater, pollution, noise, smoke, soot, adequate fire safety access, and plat specifications like street widths, building location regarding this and safety specifications. And in section 4, there was this reference to special events. Now, I don't know whether that number has been filled in, but we discussed defining as a special event. That's section 4A4. That defined it as an event that's expected to occur no more than 2 times per year and no more than 1 time in any given month. Was that inserted in, Tara?
Yeah, you must be looking at an older version, not the one that was provided for public hearing back in February.
Maybe.
Here's what you decided, that exempt would be events or other uses that are expected to occur no more than 2 times per year and no more than 1 time in any given month. And
Okay.
minor would be events or other uses that are expected to occur no more than 3 times per year and no more than 2 times in any given month. That's what was noticed for public hearing. That you should have received back in February.
Yeah, and there may be lots of them.
Well, it says right on
Another,
public hearing.
yeah.
That's what I said.
okay, okay. And the one that I had in my hard drive was
Okay.
previous. Good, I'm glad it's done.
Wait, which one?
Okay, a great deal of work was done on drainage. And I think all of this is, well, very positive. And in section 6G, landscaping and screening, the one that is of particular notice, which is section 5, noise. Noise is that which can reasonably be expected to be heard beyond the property lines at greater than typical residential levels, including hours and durations of impact. The applicants may be required to provide a noise study report, including decibels, noise level, contours, and list remedies to reduce the impact to neighboring properties and public areas.
It's in section 7,
Yeah.
7G.
7G?
Yeah.
Good. That was something that was, well, it's been a matter discussed on
7G.
several occasions,
5. No.
and I'm glad to see that it's in there. And then in section 8 on standards, there's conformance with all zoning ordinances, which is, something that we discussed previously. In other words, all of these updates are very positive, and I think we have a much better site plan review regulation than we had previously. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move, we accept the,
We need to open a public meeting and close it.
We did that already.
We did it.
Okay, okay,
No, I've done that.
8:03.
okay, sorry, my mistake. Sorry, gosh.
So we close.
Okay.
Second.
Let me hear the motion again.
We closed.
We did.
I opened it and closed it. Yes, because there were no participants in the public gallery.
Good.
We're good. Motion, please.
I move we accept the site plan review regulations as drafted,
And as a,
as amended.
Adopt would be better than accept.
I move we adopt.
Mhm.
We adopt the site plan review regulations as amended.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Adopted.
Bill, could I have 2 or 3 minutes before I hop off?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to say it's been a pleasure to work with this board and with the Waterville community in general. The staff, Conservation Commission, Tyrell and their team have been awesome. I think we've done some good work together over the last 8 years, and I leaving you with a good solid foundation. You've got your master plan action plan, strong enforceable zoning ordinance. Now you have finally some teeth in your site plan regulations. feel free to ask questions or reach out if you need help with a specific project. I'm not retiring, I'm just cutting back a bit, and I'm pleased that you didn't hear any barking because the timing is perfect to cut back a bit because my new rescue pup arrived a week and a half ago. So, if anybody is a dog person, I now have 2 rescued 1-year-old male cattle dog mixes, so I need lots of time to exercise and train. Since they were bred to bully bulls into submission, and they're gonna be my travel buddies, so we have some work to do
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Works very well.
I had a few notes as well. A big thank you to Tara. I think it's 7 years of dedicated advice. Am I correct in that?
I think somewhere in the end of 2017,
Well, Tara's advice and counsel has brought us out of the woods and into today's world of more complicated and sophisticated planning and regulation. What we have is a comprehensive master plan. We worked hard on that and Tara guided us through it. Thank you. And we have a thorough review of the zoning ordinances, improved subdivision and site plan regulations. Well, Tara, you will be missed. Your work has been much appreciated. And although YouTube is good for many things, it's not very good for making a presentation to you. So an expression of our appreciation will be forwarded to you at an early date.
thank you. It's really been my pleasure. Again, don't hesitate to ask questions. I'm not gonna be far.
She's still on speed dial.
Yeah. Okay,
All right, have a good rest of your meeting.
thank you. You may disconnect this morning if you wish. Anyway, we're gonna move on and
Meeting.
You wanna do the minute?
we haven't done the minutes yet. And I think it would be a good idea to do them now.
Line 28,
Which one, which,
We're looking at the minutes of March 31st.
March 13th.
line 28, is the word his, it should be her. Because it's talking about Nancy Knight.
No, but
Rick's
Yeah.
supposed to point it as full
but
member
I'm
Nancy and I would
completing the
complete
remaining year of
his-
Rick's alternate
His
term,
term, okay.
so it's correct.
Nancy will complete the remaining years of Rick's term.
His term?
His turn.
Okay,
Yeah, we basically traded.
okay, got it.
Line 64, I'd like to throw out to the board, during the RFQ discussion at this meeting, we talked about the reasons why we were gonna continue to look for planning services along with using, North Country Council and SE Group because there was a conflict of interest with Tyrell. And we had a discussion about that. I think it should be noted in there with something along the lines like, so starting with line 63 to say, like SE Group for consulting services with North Country Council assisting as needed where, SE has a conflict of interest with Tyrell or something along those lines. I mean, I throw it out to you guys what your thoughts are on that because we did have a discussion and putting something like that in there. If someone was reading this would understand a little better why we've got 2 groups here and why we're continuing to look forward, because without that in there.
Okay.
I think it's a great catch.
No, it's perfectly okay, but we're going to discuss that in, well, much greater detail in a few minutes. But it's perfectly okay to put it in if you wish to do that. Normally, the minutes reflect what was said during the meeting.
Which is what, we did have
I
that
think that was
conversation.
said, yeah.
We did.
Yeah, absolutely. I can add it in.
Good, done.
I mean, obviously with minutes, it's a fine line of adding everything and not adding everything.
Yes.
So it's your minutes. If you'd like them added in, I'm happy to add them in.
Good. Any other comments? Do I have a motion?
I move we accept the minutes of
March 13th.
March 13th as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Adopted. I like that word better. Now, planning board consultant agreements.
You wanna talk about the electrical stuff first, Mr. Chairman, and then we can get into this?
Okay,
This might be longer, that's all.
yes, all right. Fine with me. We have Linda Coleman with us today to talk about. Oh. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh, my turn, great.
okay, I'd like to
Thank you.
introduce you and offer the floor to you. You can do this in about 10 minutes. Please go ahead.
Oh, well, hello, and thank you for your time today. I'm Linda Coleman, and I'm here to talk about SoulSmart. It's a new cost technical assistance initiative funded by the U.S. Department of Energy. It helps local governments implement national best practices for solar planning, permitting, zoning, and inspection. There are 34 communities across New Hampshire participating now in 9 counties. To give you a perspective, the smallest is Randolph with a population of 329, and the largest is Nashua with over 91,000. So as part of this program, SoulSmart conducted a solar zoning review for Waterville Valley, which you have the summary of. There's also a module offered specifically for planning board members who want to learn more about that, and that's on April 17th at noon. If you want to attend, let me know. I'll make sure I get you a Zoom link. The zoning review is intended to be an informational resource for solar ordinances for best practices alignment. SoulSmart offers suggestions of language for those which don't. So if you looked at that, you saw, meets best practices or doesn't. So there is suggested language if you're interested in it. Bill has it, and I also can get it to you. And I volunteered with Kathy, John, and Tara when we first drafted these in 2023. So I really enjoyed, appreciated the feedback, and I thought that the planning board would also. So I don't think we need to go over each individual one unless you wanted to. I promised Bill I would be quick.
No,
Does anyone have any
highlights.
questions about it?
Could you send me or give me the link? I'm not gonna be here on the 17th, but I might want to zoom in on that.
Sure.
Maybe you could just send it to everybody.
Yeah, that'd be
Okay,
great.
maybe
I can send it to you. Okay, I will do that.
everybody would like to see that material? Fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah,
Could you give us highlights of what the recommendations were?
Sure, I can do that. I have a full copy right here. So the first one on your sheet that says needs improvement, and again, this is just for informational purposes, which is the code does not contain a purpose or intent for including solar energy regulations in the code. And then the suggested language could be Waterville Valley has adopted the following regulations to encourage the efficient and effective development of use of solar energy systems while protecting the public health, safety, and welfare of the residents. And then it has a paragraph under that. So there is more information if you wanted to consider that, in the future. I think overall, when you look at, what met and what needs, we have a pretty good.
Yes, we did work on this earlier in the year to,
Basis, so I think we have a lot to be proud of, and there's, always like to see these things move forward.
okay, in general, I think we could say that we're encouraging that as the board would be positive toward the implementation of solar energy.
Absolutely.
That solar energy is coming on rapidly as a means of producing and delivering sustainable energy. And we'd like to do at least something to make it more agreeable and acceptable and inviting to, without, making disturbance that would be say objectionable by neighbors and those on adjoining properties, abutters. It's a balance
It is.
to be able to achieve solar energy without being ugly. So, yeah, anybody have any comments about this? We generally, as a board, in favor of encouraging solar energy.
Absolutely.
Nods of approval.
All right, well, thank you very much for your time, and I'm also on the Community Power Committee, so whenever you're working on anything energy related, we're always happy to be involved, so thank you for your time.
What is the next step?
The next step is up to you. For me, I will be working with Soul Smart for the next couple of weeks. We look at permitting, so I've contacted Dave Noyce about that and inspection. And then, you know, we can take it as far as we want. If you want to look at the zoning ordinances again and, you know, look at what their suggestions are, you can do that. If you think they're fine for now, that's fine too. So it's really up to you.
What is is this a commercial entity to any degree?
Well, it's a company. They are funded, federally funded, and they work nationally. So it is its own company.
So it's not a government agency.
It's not a government, no, they are hired by a government agency.
And did they sell equipment?
Not as far as I know. They just work with people to.
What I'm exploring is, in whose interest is this?
This is put out in the interest of local communities to promote solar, so they can, some towns don't have any solar ordinances. Some, if you look at them, well, I've looked at them, are really complicated about what you can put where and, you know, really detailed inspection, what they need for the permitting. So it's really up to each individual town, what you think is best for our town.
Okay, so and I don't want to speak for the board, anybody else has a comment on this, I think we're generally in favor of implementation of solar energy.
I think Waterville Valley has exhibited really positive, friendly solar ordinances.
And that we're not promoting somebody else's commercial interest.
No,
That's the general interest of what's good for the town.
exactly.
Okay, I think then we can proceed by examining some of these recommendations.
Wonderful.
We might, yeah,
Question, we don't seem to have a solar ordinance. We have,
there's,
you know, in the,
you know,
whatever we call it, the checklist of what's allowed where, we have things.
in this grand package here, that's what you mean, yeah.
I don't
that's-
see a solar ordinance.
Well, there's reference to it. But it's,
Is it a select board ordinance?
No,
no,
there's no standalone.
Okay, thank you.
solar
yes,
power
the direct
ordinance.
answer to your question, we don't have a specific solar
It's in the
ordinance.
checklist. It's in the checklist.
Now, that's what I'm addressing and what Linda has, these recommendations, and when you read them, at first, it sounds like somebody's trying to tell us what to do. But on the other hand, it looks like it's directed toward encouraging the implementation of solar energy, which, you know, it's happening. That, you know, I've read recently of how companies who are desperately interested in increasing power, particularly for developments in software that eat tremendous amounts of power, are looking towards solar energy as well as nuclear and others. So it's a significant increase in the country's ability to develop power, that solar energy be developed.
Would you say that like the ground mounted solar projects are where we probably as a town maybe need to start with looking? Where our opportunity as far as what's in the ordinance, you know?
You know, the planning board probably knows best, but, you know, from my perspective, you know, just, I would look at it all because there, you know, I know we're not supposed to look at particular parcels, but there are parcels available where you could do ground mounted or you could do roof mounted. It's whatever you think would work for the town. And at some point, because there are both available, you should probably maybe look at both.
Mhm. Okay, so I could go, Rick,
I'll go ahead and finish it.
and you brought this to our attention. So now our next step would be to examine the recommendations. We find something that's executable, put it on the agenda.
Sounds
Is
great.
that all right with everybody?
Yeah.
Rick?
Is, sort of when I read this initially, had a reaction to sort of this code or, does not limit or include standards and so forth. And that was, I think, it was aligned with Soul Smart, which is basically, we're not gonna limit anything so that it's really good for solar. Now, I'm in favor of this, you know, all the alternative energy sources we could get around here, frankly. But, I have a concern about the aesthetic personally, in terms of we're in a wonderful, beautiful place. I like to keep it that way. So when we do review this thing, I guess you could understand that I'm gonna be coming at it from that perspective
No,
quite a bit.
I don't think that you're unique in that regard.
Yeah, I think you mentioned something.
Yeah.
as well. You brought-
All of us are here for the same reason. That, you know, we love this place. And nobody wants to make it ugly. But to be able to implement solar energy in a way that's aesthetically acceptable, I think is a step forward.
Yeah. Yep.
Good. Any other comments? You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're part of this group too?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, okay. Now we can move on to,
Have hard copies for anyone who wants them.
much paper.
These are the two copies of the proposed contracts from the organizations. They've been emailed to you. You have.
Take one.
Yes.
Ready.
Thank you.
Oops. Oops.
Yes.
All right, so, Rick, do you wanna kind of take the lead? Rich isn't here today. I'm gonna go through with the subcommittee. Yes. No, oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, well, I could have expanded that, but then it would scroll. But,
There we go.
Well, we, did I guess, did everybody
Everybody has
has,
them.
Yep.
everyone has them, has everyone had a chance to look through this? I've had a conversation with Mark on a couple of things here, and I think they're reflective of.
They're not yet.
Okay.
We'll update these with the final, with all the town of Waterville Valley information on them and, you know, all of that before they're signed.
I don't wanna go through the whole things, if you guys have looked at these, but what I do wanna call it, to attention is that the SE group contract, if we look at that first, is inclusive of the things that we discussed in the last meeting. Very specific, project-oriented involvement with them to, identify some key things that we could identify as changes, to our zoning ordinances relative to, the kinds of things that they find. Specific timeline of around 3 months or with 4 months total duration, given the opportunity for maybe adjustments or things that we need to do, unforeseen things that come up.
Margaret?
And
I do have a question because at the top it says that their rate is a $12,500 fixed fee.
Jumping ahead, Margaret.
We're gonna.
Yeah.
Good catch, Margaret.
That's okay, Margaret.
You beat me to it. That was one of the things we talked about yesterday.
And I got an email back from SE Group and they're making the change, so it's 12,500
It's
for
not,
this work.
Yeah,
it's not
max.
15,000
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
or
We,
14,500.
Correct.
Yeah.
We definitely made a note of that.
Thank you.
Well, what about the direct fee? Do we want to talk about that later? Because then it's in addition of the direct expenses are on top of that. The,
Well.
it says
yes, if adds.
travel.
Yeah,
Documents,
Yeah.
materials, in-house print copies, all the mock-ups plus 10%.
Yeah.
So it's more than the
a little
12.5
bit more
it's gonna
than-
be. Is
and
there a
then-
cap at all that they
Yeah, what's our budget?
like?
Well,
Budget was
the
10.
budget is another discussion because we have both of these contracts, right? So we have SE Group doing this very specific work that we wanted them to do to make sure that everything was in line with a ski, from a ski community standpoint. 12,500 plus the direct costs, the budget for the planning board total right now is 12,500. But we do have contingency amounts. I've talked with Rich about it. And we can cover, when we get to the North Country Council one, that is an hourly rate. Okay, the 11,000 that is quoted in there is if they showed up at every meeting for the year and they prepped for every single meeting, right? Which there will be meetings that they won't have to.
That considers 12 months, right? Mark?
Correct.
If we're already into.
We're already in we're in the fourth meeting already, so we only have 8 left. So we anticipate that the North Country Council expenditure will be much lower than the 11,000 that's quoted. The other thing about the North Country Council numbers are, if there's a project before you and they're doing work on the project, that's borne by the developer. So some of the expenses that the executive director of North Country Council is expecting will be paid by others other than the town. So whatever's left over, the town will be able to cover through our contingency.
Bill Allen has his hand raised.
Right. Alan, you have the floor.
Thank you. A couple of things. I'm very troubled by the conflict of interest that was discussed, particularly on item number 5. You're sort of asking the wolf to go in the hen house to have us write regulations and things that's directly going to affect, their other client. Second part is regarding their fee. I did Chat GPT and got answers to number 3 and 4 in about 2 seconds. So I'm not sure why we're paying for that. I'm willing to share that if you guys want. But specifically number 5, this conflict of interest.
Well, they don't adopt anything, the board does. They are gonna simply be making recommendations to you. And if you feel that it's a conflict, that what they're recommending is somehow harmful to the town, fine, don't accept it. But they have experience across the country and across New England in ski area specific communities. And I think that was when the subcommittee talked about it, that was what we wanted to try to capture. Additionally, they've already done all kinds of work for the town. They have interviewed people in town, and so the subcommittee had said, let's let them look at our ordinances and our regulations and look at it with a different viewpoint than what Tara has been doing over the last 8 years. And that is with specific to support of a resort community, because that's what they do. So whatever the board wants to do, they are not mandating that you do anything. So
Yeah, but
there's.
Mark, I'm sorry. I understand what you're saying. I don't agree. I fully expect us to approve this, but only because we don't have any alternatives. But how are they going to figure out the long-term objectives and perspectives of the community?
They're not, you are. They're gonna make recommendations to you for those long-term goals. But it's going to be the board that accepts or rejects what they recommend. It's just like any other consultant that comes in here. They don't make the decisions for us.
What I want to do is not waste our money by having them recommend changes to zoning based on the incorrect long-term objectives and perspectives. They say they're going to reference the master plan. which is, in my opinion, a flawed document. Whereas we had that community survey, which I think has a much more accurate sense of the residents and what they want. There's no reference to that here.
Well, then make it a reference. Vote to have them look at that. Like I said, the board's controlling this, not SE Group. They will do what you guys want them to do. If you all feel like Alan does, then vote on it. And we'll tell them that you want them to look at that survey. They're gonna come in 3 times and sit down with you and talk to you as part of this process. You're guiding this.
I think we should start with what Bill Spence said earlier. We love this place. And it doesn't, I think they're going to have a bias to have how do you get to a vibrant town center? Again, I'm going to send something to Alicia to share with you, if you don't mind.
How are you sending it?
I just sent it to an email at you at Waterville NH.
Okay. I don't have email here, but you can share your screen. Do you know how to do that?
Okay, let me see if I can do that. How do I do that, Bill?
Tell us what you want us to hear.
Well, again, I'd like you to read what I read, what I got from ChatGPT, which is all I think they're going to end up doing, basically.
That's a misrepresentation. These guys have decades of experience working with large and small mountain communities that have ski resorts at them. Yes, they have done work for the resort, but they've also done work for the town of Waterville Valley as a community. And they will do what you want them to do. If you're not satisfied with what the subcommittee decided, then don't do the contract. But it's a little out there to say that they are coming in to somehow sabotage the planning board and make us do what the resort wants to do. It's whatever you guys want to do. They're not gonna make the community do anything. They're gonna tell you what their opinion is and what they have seen elsewhere and what you can consider to do. And if you don't like it, don't do it.
But again, I think you're wasting time and money if you're framing the question the wrong way.
Then if the board feels that way, don't. vote
Okay,
for it.
I'd say timeout. That is, Helen, we've heard your opinion. Are there any other people any other board members who want to address this subject?
I just want to address the cost. We're using our entire budget and we're going into a reserve budget and we're in a time of taxes and I know we're nickel and diming. So that would be my concern, that as a board, are we comfortable with using our entire budget for this in addition to they're coming in 3 times for the additional direct costs? So just that we're all really clear, in a time where we have a lot of big expenses, and I know this doesn't seem like a lot, but that's where you start to kind of add things up. So I'm throwing that up there.
Okay,
I was under the impression we were coming in this not to necessarily replace Tara, but to have help writing these things and doing these things, not necessarily an audit of everything we've just recently done. So that's where my concern comes in. They're going to look at everything that we literally just did.
Mhm.
And so that seems like the same thing over again. So we're paying an additional fee for them to tell us what we just did.
I'd say no, that it's a different perspective. A very different perspective. And one of the reasons that I think we should consider this is what's coming. That is, I keep looking at that map behind you. And that what will occur in the future requires, I'd say, new and additional assistance, direction, input. And the experience that these people have is invaluable. We're not gonna find it anywhere else.
Agreed, but they're not gonna be advising us for this.
No, they're not, but
because of that,
they're,
we still need to find somebody
But
that can do that. So I mean, I hear what you're saying, you know.
if we're gonna find somebody who will do that, I don't think so. We have, North Country Council that will give us assistance, and when we get around to talking about North Country Council, we'll see that they have hired an experienced, person. An experienced person, somebody who, in the dimension of Tara's experience, to help us step by step. But what we don't have is an overreaching view of what it will be like to develop such a large portion of commercial zoning. And with respect to what will happen at the mountain, we don't have that perspective. And I think we can afford it. Yes, I fully understand the concern about spending money. But my concern is, what will we face down the road as Tyrell brings one big project after another to us? Will we have the dimensions, and will we be able to think in those terms to make good decisions for the town?
Yeah, that's why I think we gotta keep looking for somebody that can fill that.
And why can't North Country Council do it all for us? What was the reasoning behind that? Do you remember?
I think some of it was experience and availability,
Okay.
certainly.
Yeah, initially it was availability. And then experience, if we have a Tara-like person from North Country Council to be able to direct how we proceed step by step. But this perspective, I don't think it's available to us elsewhere.
I don't disagree with that, but I think, to Catherine and Alan's point, is that one of our main concerns that we all keep bringing up is the development of Tyrell and how we do that. They're not going to help us with that.
No, but they give us what I'm talking about, perspective. No, they're not gonna give us assistance when we have the direct project in front of us. But it will definitely change our thinking about how we approach living in a ski resort. Margaret,
Do we have to do this now? Is this something that we could put off for another year and just use North Country Council this year?
possible. I think we'd benefit from it now. That is, I think maximum benefit would occur if we did it now. But no. Let's, like, everybody has a vote, but if we defer it and do it later, I think we diminish the overall effect of what the SE group could do for us. That's only one person's opinion. Next is Mike.
I think we have to remember something. I am familiar with SE Group. They are one of the preeminent groups in the country in this area. Their knowledge is preeminent and far exceeds that which is available from North Country Council. Their rates, even though they sound like they're high, we have to remember that these are national rates, not central New Hampshire rates. And I can tell you from my experience, the difference between the national rates of something and the rates of something in God's country in central New Hampshire are very, very different. And a lot of us have been around and we understand that. You guys looked all over the country for somebody that can do what they are proposing to do. And the only, as I understand it, the only entity of substance that stepped forward and said, yes, we will do that for you, is them. Which is probably not a bad thing, because they are probably also the best one to do it.
We judge that.
So what I'm saying is, with all due respect to North Country Council, the knowledge and background and experience that these people have is so far ahead.
Yeah, they're not comparable.
So we have to understand, why do they have to go and review everything? As someone that has stepped in professionally, and a bunch of us have done that in our present and or former lives. When you step in, you must go in and understand that which you are stepping into. Right, and that's something that you do indeed bill for.
Yep.
So I think that we have to understand that. I think this makes sense. And I think even though, yeah, when we're dealing with Terrell, but what we have to understand is the background and everything else that they can give us prior to that happening, to my mind, is key.
That was my point.
Well, you and I very often think alike, which is truly dangerous.
Yeah. I could also add that, oh, sorry. First of all, I wanted to address Nancy's request.
Well, it was just a question of timing. I mean, when do we think we're gonna need to be armed with this knowledge? When do we think Tyrell is gonna be coming before us?
And
asking
the
for
simple
the-
answer is anytime. That is, we don't know.
Don't we have something coming down the road this summer? Maybe.
It's a relatively small project compared to
Still,
the development of.
it's a start.
It's a start. It's a start. I agree. No, what I'm thinking about is how we will address the gondola project and other items that are of that magnitude. And
Sure.
Go ahead, Nancy, you have the floor.
Well, then it just makes sense. I mean, if we don't know when they're coming, why put this off? Better to know now what they're gonna say than later.
Yeah, know as much as we possibly can know before it occurs.
Unless there's something else we're worried that's gonna come up that we need the money for this year.
No. Not yet.
Could I just make one
Not
quick
yet.
point?
Go ahead.
It's relative
You have
to
the floor.
Nancy.
Go ahead.
No, it's that, think about the last year. If we didn't have TAR to fall back on a multitude of, the things that come up that we can't anticipate. And that's kind of what, and I think, Mike, you brought that up, what a consultant's used for, right? So, and I'd like to just say, I'd like to let Rick get past his second bullet point. Because we did kind of go down to, because that's the what, right?
Yeah,
Okay, so the floor is now to
we
Rick.
kind of, yeah, I'm not sure I want to do that. Yeah, because there's a few things. Maybe I should have done this and then we wouldn't be here, I guess. One thing that we had mentioned in one of the previous meetings when we were giving updates on this process was that we kept falling back to SE Group as like the folks that could really help us here with the things that they specify in this contract. I think the very first thing that came up for all of us was a conflict of interest. And whether or not we could feel good about this going in front of the town in particular, if I was on the outside of this board looking in, I'd be wondering about whether or not we were getting railroaded into whatever the resort wanted us to do. And I think we felt pretty good about the conversations we had around that, to the point where we wanted to continue the conversation with these guys. Because the way they convinced us they could separate that business they have with the mountain and what they do for them. And of course, their experience, you mentioned, they're the best in the business with regard to what goes on in ski area communities.
The other thing that you have to take into consideration when we talk about conflict of interest, and I thought about that, is the town of Waterville is already using them. And we have, depending upon whether you want to separate the resort and Terrell, 3 or 4 major entities here, right? In the mountain, Terrell, town and us. Right? And basically what the town has determined is that SE Group is capable of helping the town, which is also us, even though they also represent the elephant in the room. And that they have already understood that. And that's important to me when I look at, can they handle the conflict of interest? And as I think about, the town has determined that they can.
And one of the biggest things, if you look at that plan right there, it's VHB who is doing most of the work, or now all of the work on the valley floor. That's a separate company from SE Group. SE Group is right now focused on the mountain. So that's the conflict of interest is going to be separated more than when SE Group was doing the conceptual master plans before for Tyrell. So yeah, they'll definitely, they're involved in the overarching bigger company of the resort and Tyrell combined, because they're the same owners, if you will, right? But there is a separate company that is driving that conceptual plan now. I think what a SE Group brings to you as a board is familiarity with the community and with that plan, so that when they look at your regulations, which now meet all of the state laws, right? Tara was very good in making you compliant with all of the regulations, New Hampshire wise. So you've got a good foundation to build on. Now look at it from the perspective of a ski community, resort community. And is there a way, what things need to be massaged? And it is looking at everything you just did, but it's going to be, I think, from a totally different viewpoint. And that's the value. And the question is, do you think that's worth the 12,500?
Okay, anybody else have a comment? John.
I think two questions. Will we get to meet these people as a board?
3 times.
3 times, yes.
But before we.
No,
get
I
the
mean,
contract-
are they coming in this room so we can physically meet them? Are we gonna go Zoom again?
No, they're gonna be here.
Okay. All right,
But not every meeting.
Not every-
No, this is a very specific project. It's only, we're asking them to do one thing. And we're proposing to pay them to execute a project, but then we do not depend upon them in the future. They are not going to be the step-by-step
Right.
consultant. They're going to, I believe, change our perspective on how we view what's going to be in front of us as the next major undertakings for this board.
so do we pay them and then meet them, or can we meet
No.
them, talk about it, and then hire them?
No, if you would engage them, you would sign the contract for the 12,500, and then we would pay them as they go through the project.
All right, and Rick, your group has already met them, or?
Yeah, they were here.
Yeah.
We met them in
We did.
and they had two folks come up and talk to us.
The group was Rick, Rich, and me.
Okay, got it.
We met them when we discussed what they could do for us. And we spent a lot of time on this
And
business.
you
of-
liked them?
Do you remember their
Yes.
names?
Alex.
Alex and Mark
Mark,
Kane and I can't
Okay,
remember.
managing director, community.
Alex,
Yep.
BENE.
Yeah,
Okay.
Inez, something like that.
Alex Bellens,
Yeah, that's it.
senior associate community and recreation planner. So not their principals, if that matters to anybody, but
A managing director
Yeah.
is the most senior person in that.
Well, the principals are the
practice
people who
area.
oversee everything, but Mark is the managing director of the communities.
Yeah, Mark is the one who was the project manager of the pedestrians.
I just point that out because there is a difference in the price depending on who we have. Principals and directors, senior associates, professional staff, and administrative support all have different.
For additional work.
Yep.
Above the fixed price, right?
Well, and their
And there's-
travel fees and times and all that.
Yeah, and these fees, you know, for anybody who's worked in Fortune 500, these fees for national fees are extremely reasonable.
That's all true.
Just leave it at that.
But these two people are the ones who do the principal work in the ski resort communities.
Mhm.
You know, having the big boss here may not contribute very much
Agreed.
to what information is delivered to us. And the mention was the SE group also did the pedestrian study. They already know a good deal about Waterville Valley. And in our judgment, the working group, that wasn't anybody else who was going to be able to do as competent a job at this particular assignment. That is, we asked them to do this assignment. They come twice to discuss the progress, and then they give us a final report. And this is the 3 meetings that we will have together. And then the project is over. But my judgment is that it's going to change the way in which we look at what will be happening to Waterville Valley in the future. And that's the only reason to do this. This is it's a one project. And then we turn to the North Country Council for the day-to-day work. And the principal reason they were willing or ready to go ahead with North Country Council was because they hired an experienced consultant. And that
Well,
consultant,
it's actually a staff member of the North Country Council.
yes, the staff member. Okay, that's
Yeah.
another way of
So
presenting the information, that it's a full-time employee.
Well, it's a consultant to us.
a consultant.
some-
Their
yeah,
job is
yes.
to be a
Yeah, but
consultant.
it's a,
That's what he means in that. makes
But
sense.
it is I just want to make it clear that, this person works for the executive director, they work for the organization. So it's not a piecework kind of a thing, it's her job. And the contract is with North Country Council, not with the individual.
Do you know the individual's name?
No.
No, the executive director did not share that. I'm sorry,
Liz.
she said Liz.
Liz, okay.
So I don't know if Liz is on the list yet.
Nope.
Because she is a new hire. Liz has, according to Michelle Moran-Gray, who's the executive director of North Country Council, I guess we're shifting gears. Are we done with it?
Yeah,
No,
true,
no,
sorry.
and I also wanted to make the point, at least one other thing, and that is, it was my impression from our discussion with the SE Group that they would do this for us now. And that if we deferred it and said, no, we're not interested, that, or at least not now, that the likelihood is they'd move on. And that,
We're get stuck.
who knows whether they would,
Prices could go up.
Stuck.
yeah, if we came back later, a year from now, the way prices are changing on everything, who knows what would happen.
And you might lose the right consultant to match our needs.
This is a one-shot deal, we're gonna benefit from this. Yes, it's money, but as everybody has said already, it's not extraordinary. I think SE Group wants to do this. That was my impression,
Yeah, I mean, it's in their wheelhouse. They like to,
and I think that they have well, you might say, an affinity for Waterville Valley. And that, okay, that's my opinion, that we would benefit from doing this.
just to ask a question, I think Alan has some reservations about the need.
And I-
But does anyone else dispute the need if we were to take cost, and I know you can't do this necessarily, but take cost and concern about conflict of interest off the table? Let me make a statement before you answer that. We've leaned very heavily on Tara over the last couple of years that I've been involved in this stuff. We've needed her, either based on our level of experience or expertise in doing things with regard to what's allowed in the state of New Hampshire. and what's necessary to ensure we get what we want on paper for zoning, regulations. I don't feel comfortable that we could do this kind of review, even using what Tara gave us, because remember, she sort of did a review of our zoning with regard to the plan that's up on that wall. I don't think we could do that ourselves. That's why I feel strongly that we need these guys to come in here and do this for us. And we need them now. You have things coming down the pike. We also want to be able to influence maybe what's going to happen here. Maybe we, in looking at what they come back with, we say, hey, this is great, it's a good plan. But there's some things that we could do here that might influence that into a better solution for everybody. Now, whether or not, Terrell is going to buy into that or not is remains to be seen. But it's worth working with everybody to figure out whether or not that's something we want to do.
Yeah.
So
Well-
I'm proposing we do this. I'd like to suggest that we do this now, that we do it because we need it. And that the money is not gonna get any cheaper to do this down the road.
No, also that one of the things that we said about what I said to Tara is that we moved forward to such an extent that is, Waterville Valley is not a metropolitan area, but we've certainly improved a great deal in our sophistication and our ability to handle projects. But we're not there yet, and I think that the SE group would help us a great deal in becoming experienced enough and sophisticated enough to handle what's about to occur.
Alan will do hand raising.
Alan's up. You have the floor.
Yeah, Rick, I apologize if, I think you misunderstood what I said. First of all, I did say I fully expect that we're going to engage this group. My point is I want to have input on directing them in the direction before we start spending all our money with them. And I think maybe they'll meet that, my hope, by having a meeting with us before they go through their entire review process. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
Well, we
I
do
just don't want to, I don't want to waste our money with them. And that my goal is to maximize our input before they do their review. But, again, I think they're the best group. I understand that. I understand they'll be able to minimize their conflict of interest, but I'd like to have some input.
I think I was reacting to that chat GPT could do, I forget which three, number 3 and number 4 for us. I'm not sure I would agree with that necessarily, but what you just said clarified what you kind of meant by that, so I appreciate it.
Okay, Mark?
It says that of the 3 meetings, one is during the review process. But if you approve this and we return the contract, we just tell them, you guys want that meeting early, right? Rather than, have them do half of the review and then come in. So what I'm hearing you say is you want them to come in first, lay the groundwork for their review, and then let them go off and do the review. Is that fair, Alan?
Yeah.
So we'll
Okay.
just make that clear if you approve this.
All right. Is that generally agreed?
Yeah.
Any objections? Morgan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm still stuck on why we need an audit. I don't feel like the question's been fully answered in that this is a year contract. So if we don't get through everything, then we either need to engage them again for a higher price for doing higher level things, because prices change. They say at January 1st of every year, hourly rates will be adjusted. So, right, it makes sense, right? So this is for a year. We're already 4 months into it. So does that mean that this is good until whenever we assign this to next year? So it's not January to January. Okay. But why do we need an audit of all the things we just did? That's what I'm stuck on.
Can I give you my opinion?
Absolutely.
And other people sitting at this table have also are or were professionals in whatever they do. And I've stepped in my former life.
What was your former
Sometime
life?
today. I was a senior tax partner of a major equity firm.
Okay.
I testified before federal commissions 6 times. I published in excess of 40 national tax and economic papers.
Okay,
All right? My billing rate when I retired in 2012 was $550 an hour.
okay.
Does that put in perspective what it was?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I just didn't know.
That's what I was, all right? When I stepped in to something, if people expected me to be truly functional for them, I had to go back and read everything that was there. I had to understand it. Otherwise, I couldn't help them.
Mhm.
That's what I did. That's what every professional that I was aware of did. Otherwise, you can't do your job. All right, so
I get what you're saying.
But we're just saying that they're not gonna be stepping in though. I mean, I hear what you're saying.
they're stepping in
No,
and they're gonna
but
help us.
you're, correct
They're
me if
gonna
I'm
help us
wrong.
with
Your
this.
argument is that they
Yeah.
need to review everything in order to be prepped to help us going forward, which I would agree. But they're not gonna be helping us going forward because they can't.
Well, that.
And I'm not saying that we shouldn't do this. I
They're
think
gonna help
that's
us going
interesting.
forward with this. They're gonna help us going forward with this,
We just did those. That's my
that's-
point.
and you don't
And
think
you-
these are gonna change? You think these are gonna be the same going forward for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
I think we did a great job and that these things will be great guiding documents
I-
for that time, but I don't, of course, there will be changes.
So if
It's like
that
there were
was,
changes in the Constitution, but what I'm saying is that
It's-
the whole audit,
Nothing stays the
I
same.
know, that's what I'm saying.
But I
Nothing.
thought we were not using SE Group for our day-to-days.
We're
This
not.
was gonna
Correct,
be
we're
for the
not.
audit. This was gonna
It's
be
a
something
one-time
to kind of
project.
put a framework in, to give us ideas, which, I mean, I get all that, but we're not using them as planners. It's my understanding.
Well,
So, yeah, so that's why I'm not.
okay. Mark, you was,
No, let Rick.
Rick,
I think I wanted to maybe try to answer Maureen.
Yeah.
Think about the kinds of things that we've done over the last couple of years with regard to changes to our ordinance zoning. Floodplain. Some setback stuff in some places,
Mhm.
at least tried to do some things with regard to potential for housing density. It wasn't very specific to that area that's depicted on that map. That's where we're gonna try to influence here, I think, with the work that we're gonna do. It's more broad reaching than that. But I think I would suspect that what they come back with is gonna be a much more focused analysis of what we've got relative to what we might have coming.
Based on their experience.
So I think it's just hard for me to square that we're like, we want to work with SE Group to help stave off any issues we may have with the future development of the town, which is a major development, right? It would change the center of the town. But they can't, they're not, that's the conflict of interest. That's what, like, that's for me. I know it might just be a me problem and I might just need to step back, but like, this is just where I'm at.
okay, two things. One, that is not the mountain.
Correct, it's Tyrell.
Yes, they're different.
Correct.
So,
Who uses SE Group?
That's VHB.
Right, but they don't use the SE Group ever
That-
at all?
They're
No.
using the SE Group for what is happening up at the mountain itself.
Trail design.
With the trail design, with the gondola. The gondola does come in here, and Mark Kane was very careful to say that, he wanted us to be aware that they were working on it. But it's not part of, it's only part of that for how it integrates into that conceptual plan. It's not like they're doing the design work on that big hotel.
Understood, yeah, that's not their
So, yes,
job.
that would be VHB. So you do have two different consultants working with the companies
Okay,
up there.
Am I-
And remember, Tara said it multiple times through the years. She was taking her experiences in other New Hampshire towns, some of them up here in the North Country, some of them down south. She was making sure that your ordinances met and cooperated with state law, right? And she always said, I did this in another town
Right.
and brought it into you. These guys are gonna do the same sort of thing, but they're gonna be looking at all the ski areas in Colorado and Vermont and New Hampshire that they
Amazing.
worked in.
Utah.
And they're gonna be looking at us as a ski community. Tara never did that. She looked at us as a New Hampshire town. And she made sure that what we have for regulations, because some of our regulations are contrary to state law, and she corrected that. And that's very valuable. But it does not say that it's necessarily the way that Waterville Valley should go.
Okay,
And so that's the difference.
thank you.
One other point, that what we did with Tara and bringing us to the level where we are now, been there, done that. Now, what are we going to do for the future? That is, we can't rely on what we've just accomplished to say that that's good for the next 5 years,
Okay,
because things are going to change here rather dramatically, depending on what's brought forward. And it's not in our control to do it. But we need to be ready for whatever comes our way. And I think that, we can't rely on what is in the package right now as good as we think that it is. It won't be good enough. Another year from now, another 2 years from now,
okay,
that those things are, it doesn't mean that we're gonna have to alter them. It doesn't mean that we will alter them, but we will look at it in an entirely different way. That's my point. And if you look at what is going on now in the state legislature,
Oh, God.
I want to talk about that for a minute, when we reach the end of the meeting, but things change. And I mean, if there was ever an illustration for that, it's what's going on in our government today.
I think
So
that, yeah,
that,
that's fair.
Holy, we gotta be as prepared as we could possibly be. Okay, now, who else?
All right, so we have subcommittees for a reason, and you guys have, deep dove, and just making a process check here. We're all not gonna agree on this, and we could talk for another hour.
Yeah.
So is it something that, let Rick finish, because you were presenting on behalf of this, and call a vote?
Yes, I agree. I'm there with you, but we needed to sound out all of the opinions. There's a kind of balance between what need to hear and then the need to call the vote, and Margaret has a point.
Yeah, I agree with Rob that we did have a subcommittee who did the deep dive, and I'm supportive of that subcommittee. The only reservation I have is that I remember what the reaction of the public was to the pedestrian study, that we spent far too much money for what we got in return. And of course, there's no way to predict that ahead of time. But that's kind of where it lies with
I
me.
understand, but we're still using the pedestrian study.
Yeah.
You
Affects my sense of what the public.
Oh, $90,000?
Oh, yeah. it was
People
a big
came
deal.
back and said, oh, we could have done that for 10.
What
Yeah.
the-
No.
Not talking about this.
Yeah, but we're
still
done
using it.
talking about it, yeah, but
No, offense.
Yeah, we haven't
we
marketed
all
it
had
well,
a
but we
chance
have
to
been
read
using
it.
it, so.
we all read it, we all have our views. But I move that we accept the subcommittee's recommendation regarding the hiring of the SC group.
I mean, I'll second it. I'm not against it by any means. I just
Okay.
wanted my questions answered, and I appreciate that everybody did.
Call vote.
I call the vote, and we should go around the table and do a roll call. So
Okay.
starting with Rick,
Rick Smith, aye.
Mike Capel, aye.
Margaret Turner, I.
Bill Spence, aye,
And Brennan, I.
Morgan Demey.
John Racine, aye.
and it's done, adopted.
Thank you.
Well, did Margaret get a I mean,
Because she's actually.
because she's ex officio, we kind of went
I
over.
think
jumped over
She
her.
did vote.
Okay, sorry, I thought we
No,
jumped
no,
over.
no, we would never exclude,
Nancy is an alternate.
Oh, neat, it was neat, yeah, sorry.
we would never exclude Margaret. Okay, now we move on to North Country Council.
So, I'm gonna keep going.
Yes, please.
Um, I think I would get quite a bit of agreement with regard to the sort of everyday support that we've also been provided by Tara over the years. With regard to the review of submitted plans and daily, sort of reaction to things that might be coming from the state. As well as just questions that we may have regarding things that we want to do. We need that help as well. And I maybe open the floor to anyone that would disagree with that statement. We need day-to-day support for this planning board. We all have things going on in our lives. We don't necessarily know where to go to look for things. Tara's done an awful lot of, sort of, you guys aren't allowed to do that by law. I don't think we'll get that here. We need to maybe lean on Mark a little and folks a little bit more with regard to that aspect of it, but from the planning and zoning aspect of what these guys can do for us. We need that day-to-day support that we will not get from SE Group. As we've talked about a little bit, they've got some help on the way, which was a big sort of impediment to us and wanted to even talk to them originally. It sounds like they've got some good plans to even hire additional folks, so from a resourcing perspective, they've made some progress there. So if you look at all of the sort of, here's what they're planning to provide us. Does anyone have any questions on any of what that was?
I would only add that we are proposing to use North Country Council on an hourly basis.
As I read that, I have one question.
Yep.
I apologize. I see here two different hourly rates.
Mhm.
One is 85, not that it's a huge difference. One is $85 an hour and one's $100 an hour. And I guess I sort of understand, but I didn't entirely understand where the breakdown between two is.
Normally, Liz, I'm sorry, I will have her name next meeting. But their senior planner will be the primary person. That person will come here, they will meet you, they will talk about the town, they'll get to know us. The review process is generally done by the executive director herself. So that's the $100.
So the general person and.
Would be at the 85.
Like, and I hate to use the comparison,
Yeah.
but like Tara.
Like Tara, yes.
Is $85 an hour.
Yep,
If we request a specific in-depth, excuse me, site plan review,
Mhm.
that would be done by that person's boss or whatever you wanna
Yeah.
call it, and that's $100.
correct. And remember that
That's fine.
that's paid by the developer.
No,
At the higher level, the review will be
that's fine,
borne by the developer.
Very important.
okay. I just wanted to
And so-
understand it.
In talking to, because I helped the subcommittee and because I'm part of the North Country Council Board of Directors, and so in talking to Michelle, I told her that it's very important for that person to come here, to meet you guys face to face, to, find out what your concerns and what you want to work on during the year from a more of a process standpoint, right? And with all the changes that we're gonna talk about potentially in state law and all of the new requirements on planning boards that are gonna be mandated by the state. I see this person helping you integrate that into the ordinances and making sure that we're keeping up with all the work that Tara did. Keeping you compliant with New Hampshire.
Yeah, there's the first step in changing the ordinances. Trying to deal with what the state's gonna throw at us.
Yeah, And Michelle,
Potential.
told
They already
me
passed
that
it.
this person isn't at the 30-year level like Tara was, but she has long experience in multiple towns in New Hampshire. So she is comparable to what we had with Tara.
That's great.
Planning and zoning personnel in the state are, as I think most of you know, at a premium right now. And I think we're very fortunate that Michelle did the recruiting that she did to
Yeah.
to identify somebody. Because Mark and I even went to the extent to call the Lakes Region council to see how their staffing levels were, and they weren't much better. So,
No, that, at the time when we started with this working group, we were striking out. And as we sit now, with the SE group ready to do a one-time project for us, but that will be illuminating. And the North Country Council with a new experienced consultant, we're in much better condition than we were when we started this project. So if there is, are there any other points and matters to be discussed with regard to North Country?
I have a question about budget. How is this all gonna work out if we're maxing our budget on SE group?
We got you. We have a contingency account.
How much is that? Oh, it's for the town.
For the town, and it'll come out of that, and we will make sure that we will cover these expenses.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, from the point of view of the working group, we don't have another choice. We need,
That's the reality.
it is the reality that we go with these two components. And that Lots Country Council is longer term, our consultant group. And that there are no other experienced consultants that on whom we can rely. So, my opinion, we do it.
Yeah.
Do I
Funny
hear?
that it takes two groups to replace one person.
Well, you look at it this way, this is a one project deal. We're not gonna be calling the SE group to say that we have a problem and we need their input. They're gonna do this for us and we'll be friends thereafter, but we don't need them. Maybe we do, that's not the right way to put it, but we won't be turning to rely on them.
I move we accept the proposed contract from the North Country Council.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? No, we should go around the table and vote for this as well. Rick?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
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 Adopted. Done.
Thanks, guys. You did a great job. I mean, appreciate you taking the time to answer my silly questions.
No, questions are good. We need. No problem. Is there any development with regard to the pond restaurant project? Nothing new. Okay, no more discussion on that matter. Committee reports.
Okay, so Town Core Working Group, we did meet and we discussed the Boulder Path project and we're putting forward to recommend the proposal that handles all the drainage issues, but keeps the path basically as it is. And Mark, jump in if you want to add anything. There's a meeting, I believe, on the 17th with the select board to discuss that. We also talked about the village path. There's where the tunnel is, the flooding, and they talked about how the problem is that the path is higher, on both sides, so the tunnel floods. And the resort is helping to build that up and address that problem. It was recommended rip wrap, which I'm not really familiar with.
Big rocks.
Okay. Make it higher like on both sides.
No, it's a rock group.
Yeah. Tom Gross spoke about there's a tournament coming up and we're going to try and bring in portable restrooms for that part of town. We discussed lights lighting, projects, and that was it. Yeah.
What about lights?
Yeah,
Well, there's the solar,
Oh.
the solar, projects, and, we talked about, the carriage versus the Cobra lighting, and we spoke about, people's opinions of the holiday lights, like what feedback they'd gotten from the community on this past holiday season, and people shared that they thought it was positive. You
Yeah,
wanna
on
add
the
anything?
lights, we have the company that provided us with the 3 lights here. Has also prepared a plan, which we're gonna go over at the next town core working group meeting. For lighting on the bridge at the pond and also lighting around town. So we have a town-wide plan from them. So we're gonna start conversations about that before bringing any recommendations to the select board. And we have the $50,000 that was appropriated into the lighting capital reserve. So we have some funds, we may be able, if the town core working group recommends it to the select board, we have some money available, we could start implementing some of that plan if everyone agrees to it, but imagine there'll be public discussions about that before we move forward at all.
And I'd also like just to note that the next meeting is gonna be April 22nd at 12:30. It's not, we've kind of switched around, not the normal second Tuesday. So,
okay. Is there a report from conservation?
There is, so they also elected new officers into the committee. And Paul Ricotta is now the chair of the Conservation Commission. They also discussed April 22nd, which is Earth Day. So they are going to do, the commission is gonna do something with the WVRD, the rec department. With the school department, something special for that day for Earth Day. So they're all gonna try and work together. And that's about it.
Just on the conservation area. Anybody that's driving a Subaru dealerships, all the dealerships in New Hampshire. Are giving away free, I'm getting 2 trees on Arbor Day.
Oh,
Nice.
I don't have a Subaru anymore.
What?
I don't
Okay.
have one anymore.
Trees?
Well,
well, put
I
them-
don't know whether, if you don't have a Subaru, if you call the dealership, maybe they'll give you one, I don't know.
They'll give you a Subaru.
Yeah, they'll give you a Subaru. But we're getting 1 flowering tree and 1 non-flowering tree, and I don't know what we're doing with them, but
Lovely.
Oh, placed where? On your
one is at
property?
your house.
Okay,
But no, I don't know, but they're like 3 feet high, which isn't bad for
Free treat.
a tree.
yeah, but the deal is they're gonna be on your property.
No, the deal is that we can do with them whatever we choose,
Put them where you want.
all right?
Yeah.
That's why I said 1 is going outside your door. But no, since they were free and, yeah, I don't know what we'll do. We'll worry about it when we get back from our quick trip to check on my sister-in-law, so.
Okay. Anything else? I can spend,
Legislation.
yes, I have,
Oh, yeah.
I have some notes on legislation. Principally, what the state is doing is passing laws. I think they've already passed them.
They're all still in process, but they are all on track.
They're heading in the direction of being passed.
Mhm.
All right, to allow residential homes to be built in the commercial zone is the one that I think is most
Yep.
good. All right, in principle, no. I understand you're shaking of your head,
Wow.
and I can tell you that your 3 executives, Morgan, Kathy and I wrote a letter to our elected representatives to tell them that it's very unlikely that politicians in Concord know what it's like to manage land use in the middle of the White Mountain Forest in a ski resort. And that these one fix does it all. Passing of legislation at the state level is going to be beneficial to our town, and I thus that there are a great number of other towns who feel exactly the same way. But it was to no avail. That's first, that's what's happening, that what the
By no
politicians,
avail, do you mean they voted the other way anyways, or do you
Yes.
mean?
well, they
voted
didn't,
the right
they
way,
didn't
but-
answer, and they didn't say that we understand your concerns.
but
And
how'd they
that
vote?
they went ahead and voted in the,
I'm gonna tell you,
I didn't hear your answer.
they,
voted
they,
they,
they voted, that is, the politicians in Concord believe that there is a housing crisis. Yeah, I think we can accept that. But they believe that by forcing,
I just asked how the Waterville representatives voted. I
yeah, we
decided-
have our elected representatives. Yeah.
Ed Baldwin, who lives in
Yes, I know,
Thornton.
but did they vote on it? And if so, how did they vote?
I don't know.
I don't believe it was a roll call vote. We can check on the status of all of the bills, because there are multiple bills that are related to this same topic.
I'll enumerate some of them here.
Yeah. So we can find out what the exact voting has been, but.
In principle,
the
the,
voice, vote.
Hold on.
in principle, the politicians think that they're solving the housing crisis by forcing towns to alter their ordinances to allow residential homes to be built in the commercial zone. You know,
Single
but there isn't anything that we can do about it. Once that state law supersedes town ordinances. And requiring cities and towns to allow homes to build on smaller lot sizes. We define what the lot size is here. You know, we have steep terrains, we have mountain territory, we have forests. We do what's good for us. They're going to tell us what the size of a house lot is. And there isn't anything we can do about it.
But that's okay, because they're not in this particular legislation. They're proposing half-acre lots, which we already have, so we're not as affected, but there are some towns that have 1 acre, 2 acre.
2 acre lots, yeah.
And they're now gonna be half an acre, because it's going to be mandatory that it be a half acre, a residential lot.
And the third significant change is to allow property owners to build detached accessory dwelling units by right.
So we will have to change ours, and this is the other part of that is, I don't know how the legislation would be implemented if it passes. So I don't know if the law actually tells you the language that you have to put into your zoning ordinance. I believe that if this legislation passes, that there is no town vote. They are simply gonna give you the language and you're gonna have to insert it into the ordinance. The detached ADUs, obviously for us, would be a new facet. And it would be mandatory, it would not, my understanding of the legislation is, it is irrespective of lot sizes or anything. People just have a right to put another unit on their property.
And that could impact significantly our regulations on short-term rental.
But
Exactly.
my question, they would still have to stay within like certain, like we have
There
some
are
boundaries
conventional-
and
yes, we have
setbacks and
setbacks
things like
and
that.
things
That
like
still
So
would have to be.
I believe that is the case, but again, you can request a variance on any of the dimensional requirements.
But we
And
don't have to give it.
we do not have to give it to
ZBA.
them, is my understanding, so.
So, and the requirement that accessory development unit have plumbing?
Yes,
Yes,
It will have plumbing.
yeah,
It
so.
has to have plumbing. To be a dwelling
A
unit,
dwelling unit.
you have
Yeah.
to have a bathroom.
Otherwise, it's a shed.
Otherwise.
Well, you could have one of those incinerator toilets.
So,
It still has.
Well,
plumbing
toilet,
ish.
yeah.
no, I'm thinking of a neighbor that does not currently have plumbing and was denied accessory
Yep.
dwelling unit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that person would now be able to.
If
Do as they
meet-
wish.
If they meet the dimensional requirements, absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Then they would be able to put a bathroom in there and have.
Accessory
ADU.
dwelling, yeah.
That's a problem. Yeah,
So
but our
what's the
zoning right
process?
now requires that the ADU be attached to
Right,
a house.
I've been unfortunately down there with the legislature on the education funding stuff, which they're also messing up quite
Terribly.
terribly. But in talking to both senators and House members, they only talk about the housing crisis in New Hampshire. One senator related to me that we tell towns what to do all the time. We don't understand what the problem is. This is going to pass. So
We
these
don't
bills,
understand, but we don't
these
care.
bills are going.
That's
to
more
pass.
like it.
They, yeah.
They think they're
and
solving the housing crisis.
They do, and the governor has indicated, I believe, that she will sign all of them. So these are things, that we would work with Liz on and try to figure out what they mean for us. And
The
Rick.
thing that upset me,
Pardon me, Rick, you had your hand up first.
Can we limit the use of those to, or not include short-term rentals? So if the intent is to create housing stock for people, I would take that to heart and say, okay, you can build an accessory dwelling unit here, but you can't do short-term rentals in there.
we will have to ask council.
Okay.
on
We will explore that.
We will look at that,
But
but there is
nothing.
there is nothing in the proposed bills that limits it to full-time residents.
yeah,
So, and I think that's an unintended consequence, especially in the North Country. That's what you're gonna see, but certainly the legislators' intent is to create affordable housing in the state.
Yes.
I think they're going about it wrong, but that's my personal opinion.
I have four specifics. One bill, that's House Bill 577, would allow the construction of detached accessory units, additional units that are not directly attached to the primary residence by right, stopping cities and towns from passing zoning ordinances that automatically exclude them.
Mhm.
It would be game over. Another is House Bill 382, which restricts the minimum number of parking spaces a municipality could require of a housing development, such as the least one space per resident and one space per unit in attempt to block projects. In other words, where it has been possible in the past to say to a developer, no, you can't go ahead with this because there's insufficient parking. Yeah, that's what ours does. But now it says that
do that.
you can't do it.
And if you remember, that was an issue with the housing that Tyrell proposed,
Yes.
so maybe that comes back.
so we won't need a garage anymore then.
You will not.
Yeah, where are you gonna put your car? Who knows where you?
Concrete garage.
Maybe that's,
Yeah.
I mean, the consequence.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, there's Senate Bill 284,
Yep.
which limit the number of parking spaces in a town zoning code, which means that where you have a large number of spaces. Okay, I read it, that while Senate Bill 84 would block cities and towns from setting minimum lot sizes of more than 1 acre for residential homes serviced by sewer and water lines. So if you got sewer and water line,
But we're already at a half acre, so that doesn't.
That's okay.
Yes.
what I was trying to address is
The parking space.
the parking, that is where there's more than 20 spaces. there is, would limit the number of parking spaces that a town zoning code could demand.
Which could substantially change all of the parking
Yeah.
lots in the center of town.
Right.
Mhm.
So again, all of these things, and they all appear that they will pass as presented.
And there's Bill 631, which has which would allow property owners in commercial zones to build residential units while allowing cities and towns to impose some restrictions. I'm not sure
Which
exactly.
we have second floor requirements for residential property in the commercial zone. Hopefully that will be enough to meet the intent of this law, but again, you know, if the court agrees with the legislature, you're gonna see all of the decisions out of the court go towards giving the property owners the right to build these units. So, a lot of the having residential development where the town wants it is kind of
It's in
going by
question.
the wayside.
It's in question. Yeah. Yeah, that's where, one of the strong contentions, as we have talked about at some point, during last year, and one of the times when, James was here,
Mhm.
that we didn't want any more, developments such as Green Peak in the commercial zone. Now, whether we'll be able to say anything about that in the future is in question.
Not a question, I think
That's what I just said.
Yeah, so we did write the article for the wigwag as well, that was in there, but the link that's in that is for. Oh, Seelig, is that his name? Tom Seelig, the Durham town.
Todd Sellers.
Todd, there you go.
Yes,
That his article is great, but it lists out all of them, all of the bills. Like there are even some that are like, you can't, if somebody comes to you with a plan, we can't ask how many bedrooms there are.
Right.
It's just weird, random things, it seems. So I would encourage you all to read that article and then look up each individual
yeah.
one.
I picked on these as being, say,
Yeah.
because we'd be here for another,
Oh, gosh, right.
There's a lot of.
there are a lot of these bills that are just coming out of the woodwork.
And they're getting, unfortunately, they're getting passed, some of them are getting passed on what's called the consent calendar, which means there is no debate. And there is no listing of how there's no vote by the body, it's just automatically passed. And so, a lot of these things will not even be discussed, debated on the floor of the House or the Senate. They will simply, it's a single voice vote, and there's there can be 15 bills on the consent calendar, and you get a single voice vote that's not recorded, and they all pass.
It'll become state law,
So,
which is what Tara keeps telling us, that's a state law, we gotta do this, we gotta do that,
Yeah.
and now we're gonna be stuck with this problem.
And so,
we're gonna have to sort through, MHMA is fighting, the municipal association is fighting a lot of this stuff, they're trying. Every town is saying, please don't do this, but
Falls
that's
on deaf
not
ears.
what's happening.
what I don't understand, and my thing with this, and I've been looking at it from a planning board and also with my other hat is a school board, and Mark knows some of the things from the school society and are at least equally disadvantageous, is a nice way to say it. I would say disastrous. What bothers me is that the municipal association, the group of towns is saying to the state, don't do this. And the representatives who theoretically should be looking back to what their towns and cities are saying, we don't care what the towns are saying, we're gonna do it anyway. And that's one thing I don't understand. The other thing that I don't understand is I did write with both hats, two separate things. And said, could you please let me know your position? And I gave them my cell phone number and both of my emails. And guess what? I hear more, well, I hear lots from you, but. I heard nothing. And. I guess the question that I have, and I don't know whether to bother you, or you, or you, or you, or whatever, I also said. Would it be possible to our representative who lives right down the street? Would it be possible for you to come and explain all of this? Either to one of our committees and or the town in general?
Yeah,
And guess what I heard back?
nothing.
All right,
I should have gone to Mark and said, Mark, what can we do about it? But Mark is, I didn't wanna bother, I didn't wanna bother Mark, cause I know he's got so much going on, but.
That's why voting in local elections is important.
Yeah.
That's all we can really say, right?
I have nothing more on the agenda.
Okay,
Do I hear a motion?
we adjourn.
Do we need calendar review?
Oh.
Say again?
Calendar.
review?
Ah, next meeting. Good point. When is our next meeting?
Good thing you have,
When is the vice chair?
Vice chair.
Vice chair, yeah.
May 8th.
Yep.
At the end, yeah.
It is indeed.
8 AM, bright and early.
Anything else?
Oh, actually.
Okay. Move we adjourn.
Any other comments?
Then move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Closed.
Yay. Good job. Good meeting.
So are we gonna sit down for a few minutes? I don't think it's gonna.
Okay.